need improvement. Then, as the people who hires start to develop the mindset, then they can begin to teach that to the people who work for them, and it moves down in the organization. The next step is, after managers understand this and they learn how to think this way, is to teach it to people who are doing the work, and try to organize the people who are doing the work into work groups, not a set of isolated individuals. And those work groups are expected to do daily Kaizen. This is the way Toyota organizes. Sometimes they will show the hierarchy upside down, that the people who add value are the people doing the work, and they're at the top because they're closest to the customer. And then you as a manager are supporting them, and in a sense they're kind of above you, and you're supporting them by giving them resources, agreeing on challenging objectives, and then coaching them to achieve those objectives. So a lot of Kaizen is happening at the level of the people doing the work and their direct supervisor, who Toyota calls a group leader. But in addition to the supervisor and the worker, now in many organizations, a supervisor has 20, 25, 30, maybe even 40 people. You'll see this in a lot of manufacturing plants, for example. And what Chad found is that's too many people for a leader to coach. And that results in sporadic improvement, not continuous improvement. So they added an additional role that they call the team leader. And the team leader has ideally 4 people that they're supporting. In a manufacturing plant, the team leaders are production workers who can do all the jobs, but they have leadership skills and they have a desire to learn, so Toyota will train them in problem solving and train them in some of the tools of lean, like standard work. And then they will ask them to train the operators and to lead Kaizen activities. And then the group leaders then are working through the team leaders. So you as a supervisor, or Toyota calls a group leader, don't have to do everything yourself. You have these assistants. So if you were to have a group of, say, 20 people or 20 to 25 people, you would have 4 assistants. This is an example of a visual management tool that Toyota is now using for the team leader. Again, these production workers who are sometimes working on the job, but other times they're off the job. Roughly half their time is on the job, but half the time is off the job. And this is called a team leader control board. And this is used by the team leader to have a daily meeting with their team of 4 or 5 or 6 people. And this happens at the beginning, before the shift starts, before the actual production starts. And it typically takes between 5 and 10 minutes to have this meeting. On this board is a lot of information, but I want to call your attention to the right side where you see those red squares, because that's the basis for continuous improvement. So in that area, you'll see that there's a top row with a card on it, and then there's a second row with a card on it with some information. Each of those rows belongs to one shift. Toyota runs normally 2-shift operation. And the first shift, the A shift, has a team leader, and then the B shift has a team leader. What that card represents is one problem that the team leader has identified with the team that they're going to work on solving. And these are quick problems. They're not 3-month, 6-month problems. There's something you might be able to improve today, or maybe it'll take several days. But the maximum time to make this improvement is 4 days. So you start with a card in the first column, and then on day 1. And then if you can't implement and confirm the solution on day 1, you move it to day 2, all the way to day 4. When you reach day 5, it's in the red box, and then it gets elevated to the group leader, to the next level of management, or actually the first level of management. And that means I, as a team leader, can't solve this by myself in this team. And it's a bigger problem than I thought. So please take this on, Mr. Group Leader. So this is called one-by-one problem solving. You don't start your next problem until you solve this problem. Try to find, particularly with the busy day of the team leaders, they don't have a lot of time to work on problem solving. And if they work on 2 or 3 different projects, they may not get any of them done. So start one, finish the one. If in 4 days you can't finish, pass it on to the group leader, and then work on the next problem. The group leader has the same sort of board, and on his board he's got different rows that refer to different specialties. The group leader's taking on bigger problems that may require engineering competence or may require maintenance people who know how to tear down the machine and build things. May require somebody from the quality department or somebody just at a higher level from, say, the lean production group. So the group leader's meeting, and his meeting is 15 to 20 minutes every day. And his meeting, he has representatives from production, improvement, and typically maintenance and engineering, and maybe somebody from quality. And they come to his meeting every day. The group leader runs the meeting, and they look at the problems that they're having online, or they look at their improvement targets, and they pick something to work on, and they agree this is a maintenance issue, so the maintenance person takes this on, this is an engineering issue, the engineer takes this on. Some of those problems come from the team leaders who couldn't solve them in 4 days, and then they also identify other problems that they see in line. That could be a quality problem, it could be a productivity problem, it could be equipment is breaking down, it could be a safety issue, it could be an issue of employee morale, it could be any problem. And again, they want to solve it in 4 days. And if in 4 days they don't solve it, then it gets in the red zone and it gets escalated to the management level. So what this does is to create continuous improvement. It creates a structure for continuous improvement. So as a manager of this group leader, I can walk to this meeting, watch the meeting, I can see what problems is the group leader working on? Is he working on too many problems? Are the problems making progress? Or are they all escalating up to me? And what's the quality of the problem solving? So that gives me a tool for coaching on these quick hitter problems. The group leader also has another board which has key performance indicators on it, and they will be in the category of productivity, quality, cost, safety, and human resource development, morale. And for each of these columns, there's a key performance indicator and a target that comes from annual planning. And these are the bigger challenges for the whole year. And as a manager, I want to be sure the group leader is doing something every day to make progress in each of these areas toward the target. And in the meantime, my boss, as a manager, there's a general manager who's coming to my meetings to see if I'm making progress every day toward these bigger projects, as well as solving the quick daily problems we have. So this creates a lot of improvement. Imagine that you have a plant of 1,000 people, and 20% of those people, 200, are team leaders. And each of the team leaders is solving a problem every day. So you have 200 problems being solved every day. That's a lot of improvement. So this is the KPI board of the group leader, and Toyota has a standard of having a green 0 and a red X, and it could be a magnet or it could be like a post-it note. And what you want to do is for each of your key performance indicators, you want to decide, am I making the progress at the right speed? In which case it's green. And if I'm not making progress, then it's red, stuck. And when your boss comes to coach you in front of the KPI board, the boss is going to only want to talk about the red items where you're stuck. And if the boss sees everything's green, the boss will get nervous. Because what they say in Toyota is, no problem is a problem. If I think everything's perfect, then that's a problem because I'm not improving anything. So you expect to see red X's, and then you want to discuss with the group leader the red X's. But again, you don't want to take over and say, why don't you try this? You want to ask the group leader, what are you working on now? Do you think that's your biggest problem that you should be working on now? How many different ideas have you thought about? And are you engaging the team leaders to help you test your ideas? So that leads up to what is called in Japan, not just Toyota, but in Japan, Hoshin Kanri. And Hoshin Kanri are two Japanese words, and the Hoshin means direction, and the Kanri means management, a management system for achieving the direction. So it's direction management, and it's also sometimes called policy deployment, which means I at the senior level have some goals that I have to meet for this company, and I need all your help to do it. And I need everybody to be working on the higher priority items that support what the business needs. So there's two triangles that you see here. One is a upside down triangle, and the other is a hierarchy, looks more like a management hierarchy. Starting with the upside down triangle, which is like the organizational chart I showed you, where the workers are on top and the managers are at the bottom. One type of activity to meet the company objectives is solving these quick daily problems that I showed you. And that's called, instead of PDCA, it's called SDCA within Toyota. And what the S stands for is standard. So we have a standard for quality. We have a standard for safety. We have a standard for how to perform this job. We have a standard for the amount of scrap that comes from the machine. Whatever it is, we have a standard for cleaning your hands if you're in a hospital. And what we want to look for are deviations from the standard. When what should be happening, what we expect is not happening, we have a problem. These deviations from the standard are the kinds of problems that the team leaders and group leaders are working on every day in that one-by-one problem-solving board. So this should be happening. It didn't happen today. We had this number of quality problems. We had this number of people who didn't wash their hands properly. There's a standard procedure. One hospital I worked with, they had problems with sores of patients who were in a bed for a long period of time. And they need to turn the patient over, change the sheets, and there's a standard set of practices to avoid these body sores. They wanted 0 body sores. So that was something they checked every day. Are we following the standard? Are there any body sores? When there's deviation, you want to correct the deviation and also make sure it doesn't come back again. So the SDCA are deviations from the standard expectation today. The PDCA is getting to a new level of performance, changing the standard. So we're at the next level of performance. And that comes from the top down, and the top sets objectives, and then if I'm supporting my manager, my manager's been asking me, what can you do to help me meet my objectives? And I'm going to have a set of targets for the year to support my boss. And for that project, I have to start with the plan, not the standard. Was my plan for performing at a whole new level. This is an example of a that works for hospitals making various products. One of them is bandages, and this happened to be a plant in Barcelona, Spain, where they made, at a very high volume, special bandages for the hospital. Like some of the bandages are used when you have surgery done, and instead of using stitches and sewing you up, they put this bandage on it, and it will hold your body together and allow you to heal. So there's very precise standards. They have all sorts of conditions they have to meet the national health standards, very regulated environment, and there's many things they have to check. The actual process itself is 100% automated. Nobody touches a bandage. They actually load material onto the beginning of the line, and the materials, the bandages are coming out in boxes. They have to carry the boxes to the shipping area, but other than that, they don't touch anything. So the operators themselves are really checking the equipment and documenting that it's to quality, to specification, and they're making adjustments to the equipment, and also they have to change tools because the tools tend to wear out after a certain number of uses, and then they have to change the tools, and they also have to change over to different bandages. So that requires some changes in the machine. So a lot of the time the worker is just standing there and watching and collecting data. So in the before situation, before lean in this plant, the operators would stand there and they would collect some data, enter it into a computer, and then they would be done. And most of the time they're just standing there not thinking. This plant adopted lean, and they developed a lot of visual management. This particular visual management is called daily direction setting. And on this board are all the standards, the standard time for changing over, the standards for changing the tools, the standards for checking the quality of the bandages. They're all up there. And as they're collecting data, instead of just entering it to the computer, they're writing it down on the board. And they have a target, they have the actual, and you can immediately see any deviations between target and actual. So this is an active process of recording the data and seeing visually what's happening as the day goes on. You see this operator is making the checks, and as they're making the checks, they're then going to go back to the board, and they're going to write this information down. And they'll write the time it takes to change a tool, and everything they do is documented on the board. So this actually gives a kind of rhythm and routine to the worker, where they're doing something and checking something and then writing it down, and they're going back and forth, and it adds some routine to their day instead of just standing there looking. And then what the management team does with this information is PDCA. There's also SDCA, so they're making corrections, they're making improvements to the process, but also they have targets for higher levels of performance to make more product with the same machines, take less time to change over the machines, improve the quality so there are no defects. So the management team is doing Plan, Do, Check, Act to meet their annual ocean economy objectives in this meeting. And the workers, each technician they call, or actually they call them as a process owner. So the equipment operators, the production workers and non-production workers, they're process owners. I own this equipment. I own the responsibility for the equipment to perform at a high level of uptime. I own the quality of this machine. And I also have responsibility for improving through PDCA's targets. So they created this board. It's a little bit different than Mike Rother's kind of storyboard. And in the top you see photographs of each process owner. And in their column for their photograph, they are writing cards that describe the problem they're working on. And the card is moving down through Plan, Do, Check, Act. So for example, they have an idea for improvement and they document the idea. And this process owner is meeting with his group leader who's coaching him. And he's saying, this is the problem I have, and in the first row, and she's asking, why do you think that's a problem? Do you know the degree of the problem? Have you measured this? And then they agree that this is a good problem statement. Then it moves down to the next step where he's expected to get input from other operators and the other shifts. And then she's satisfied he's got input from other people. And then he moves it into the design phase where he's designing an idea for a solution. Then it moves down to a test phase where he's testing the idea. And finally, he's tested the idea, it works, and he is now he's responsible for standardizing it so that it continues to be used every day. So he's going through a full PDCA process and learning this scientific thinking with a coach. So that's a coach and that's the learner. And this is an example of one of these plan, do, check, act projects by an operator. In the before conditions, there were spare parts and tools needed for the machine every day. But the operator would leave the machine, walk across the plant into the warehouse, realize they didn't know where the parts were, and they would go searching for the parts, which was okay because it gives me a break. It breaks up my day. Then they come back to the machine. By then, there's another problem. The machine is broken down, and that happened while they're away. So what this operator, this process owner came up with were spare parts on the shop floor right next to the machine, color-coded, labeled, and it's very clear where to find what you need, and they also record how many cycles the tool is used so that when they reach the final cycle, they have to dispose of the tool. So that's there visually, and it's very clear at the work site. This resulted in lower downtime of equipment, improved quality, and the operators were not wasting their time walking across the plant. So this is a very good project, and he learned a lot doing it. Again, this is a daily project with the coach coaching him every day. So when you, how do you set these goals? How do you set these objectives? And the Hoshin Kanri process for Toyota, again, Hoshin is the direction, Kanri is the management process for achieving the direction. And in Toyota's case, it looks like this mountain to the right, where the top says, in Japan, the president of the company, Akio Toyota, and the board of directors sets the direction for the year based on a 5-year business plan. This is for this year, this is our direction, these are our critical goals. And then those goals have to get cascaded down through the organization, level by level. You can imagine a company the size of Toyota. At first it's a global vice president, then it goes to the regions, then it goes to different organizations like the sales organization in that region, and the manufacturing organization in the region. It gets to a plant. Inside the plant, it goes to the plant managers, and vice presidents, and general managers, and the group leader. So lots of steps. For each of those steps, the goal is to develop an initial plan, not just agree to targets. So this isn't a process of negotiating over the targets and saying, no, I can't do that. I don't have enough time. I don't have enough resources. Toyota's created a culture in which people are used to and expect their next challenge. And they accept the challenge, but now as a boss, what you want to know is not, I accepted the challenge, but have I started the process of scientific thinking? Have I collected some information about my current situation? Do I have some initial ideas for areas where I will start to work toward that improvement? Because when we finish this Hoshin Kanri planning process, the day we finish, the very next day, I expect you to start working on achieving the target. And I expect something every day. So this is more of a coaching learner process than a boss ordering you to make it happen and to get results. The left side shows what's sometimes called management by objectives, which is a more traditional way of setting objectives. And this drawing came from Volvo, the car company Volvo, and one of the Volvo vice presidents read my book about leadership, took it very seriously, found a coach, and started to learn the scientific way of thinking, and then teaches people. And he said, now that I understand Hoshinkanri, he said to me, now that I understand Hoshinkanri, I realized that what we at Volvo have been doing is management by objectives. And he said it's kind of like an iceberg, where the top management has a vision for what they want to achieve. It would be nice if we got this, it would be nice if we got this, so that these are the things we'd like to achieve as a company. And then they give orders to managers in the middle who are expected to get from the workforce results. And the executives don't really care how they do it. Just get me the results. And therefore, the senior management can only see the tip of the iceberg. They can't see below the water level and don't care. Senior management don't go to the gamut. They don't do what Ono said. They don't stand in the circle. They don't watch. They're not coaching. They're not adding value. And he said, what I learned from Toyota is that the Hoshinkanri process is more like climbing the mountain together. So I, as a leader, he was a vice president for all sales and service for the whole world of Volvo. And he says, I need to climb down the mountain and be with the people and help them to climb up the mountain, help them to achieve these goals. So he really changed very fundamentally his management style. In fact, they started measuring for all their managers time at the Gemba, time with their people, improving and solving problems. And they had a target of 15% of your time as a manager was spent with your people working on improvement. And when they first measured it, it was almost zero. This is a matrix that's sometimes used for Hoshinkanri. This is the highest level, the senior level. And what you start with is number one, which is what are your breakthrough objectives for the next 3 to 5 years? And then you ask, what are we going to focus on this first year? That's the annual plan. Then based on what we're going to try to achieve this year, what are the key processes that are going to have to improve? And by how much and by when are these key processes going to have to improve? And then finally, who are the key people who need to work on these improvement projects and lead these improvement projects? So the advantage of this X matrix, this is not a Toyota method. Toyota doesn't use this, but it's become popular in the world of Hoshinkanri. And what people like about it is on one piece of paper we can see the relationship between the long-term objectives, the one-year objectives, what we're going to work on, and who's responsible. And we can see the connections between these. So this is a very common tool, and it is valuable to a lot of companies. How this relates then to this improvement kata is that what you want as a lead leader is not for your people to say, don't worry boss, got this, see me at the end of the year and I'll have your results. You want your people to be in the process of reaching the goal, learning scientific thinking, practicing scientific thinking, practicing continuous improvement, so that those neural pathways get generated for scientific thinking. So Hoshinkanri every year is your best opportunity for developing your people, not just for getting results. So when I give you the objective for the year and you agree on what you're going to do in your organization, what objectives you're going to be, I want us to agree on the direction of challenge. I want you to also do an initial look at the current situation and break down the problem into smaller pieces that you think you can work on over the year, and then tell me what you're going to start with. What are you going to do on day one once we launch the objectives of the year? So I want a plan. I want an initial plan. and I'm going to coach you through that to make sure it's a good plan and you've really thought it through. So saying yes, boss, is not enough. Saying yes, I've looked at the current condition, here's the areas where I think we can make a difference, here's my initial plan for working on this, and I say, good plan, let's go. And then I'm coaching you through the year in the following the PDCA process, and again, using that to develop you. Some people ask me about Russian culture, and I'm actually not sure this is accurate. This is a study by a Dutch sociologist who is world famous in culture. His last name is Hofstede, 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 and he's been doing this for the last 45 years, I think. And he has a number of different factors he looks at. And I'm just going to briefly go through this based on surveys and people going in country, doing a lot of interviews, and he comes up with a conclusion. Some of this you'll agree with, some of it you won't. But basically what he says is that if you look at Japan, the natural culture is a long-term orientation. People accept the hierarchy. They don't rebel against the hierarchy, accept their place in the hierarchy. And they accept that people above them have more knowledge and wisdom and experience, and they want to learn from people above them. They tend to be collectivist. They're not very individualistic. They're more collectivist, so they are willing to work as a group, and as a group share credit. And they also don't like risk, so they want to control whatever they can. And they also are pretty low on indulgence, that is, playing a lot, and work is work, and play is play, and keep these separate, and we're not going to move around a lot of work. And their environments, frankly, are not a lot of fun. If you go to work in Toyota, it's not a fun place. They're not having a lot of parties. They're very, very busy. It's very serious. So where is the United States? And the answer is almost the opposite on every dimension. So American managers tend to be short-term thinking. They want quick results. They don't like hierarchy. Americans want to be free and independent, and they don't want a hierarchy, and they question and challenge authority all the time. They're very individualistic. Americans I want to be judged for me and what I accomplish, and I want a reward based on my performance, not the performance of the group. Americans are willing to take risks and be entrepreneurial and try new things and innovate. And Americans are relatively high on self-indulgence, getting pleasure from me. So essentially kind of the opposite of the Japanese. So if you ask how easy it is it to introduce this Japanese method that requires discipline, working as a team, putting the group before myself as an individual, thinking long-term about developing people and developing our culture, then you'd say the United States is a terrible place to do this. And it turns out the United States is very challenging for implementing lean. According to this data, Russia is actually a better place for implementing lean. More long-term, more acceptance of the hierarchy, more collectivist rather than individualistic, also conservative and not risk-taking, so you want things to be very planned and disciplined and controlled, and also lower on self-indulgence. Now you may disagree with some of these factors, like I've had a discussion about long-term thinking, and a lot of the people I talk to in Russia agree that Russian managers are very short-term thinking. They want results now and want results fast. And this is a population study. It's not a study of business leaders. It's a study of the general population. So who knows if this is exactly right or not. But my conclusion from this is there's certainly, based on just what I understand about culture and what I've seen visiting some of your plants. I worked with Rosatom a little bit. I saw the leather plant today. And what I see are people who are serious about their work and disciplined, and they seem to work diligently and hard. Then what they need is a clear direction. and they need clear processes to use and ways to improve those processes. So how do you do this? If this is really a cultural mindset change, which we saw even changing whether you write with the right hand or left hand is very difficult. So now we're trying to change the way people lead, the way they behave, and it's going to be even more difficult. So there's two approaches I've seen to lean deployment. The first is to spread lean fast across the whole organization, how many people there are, hundreds, thousands, whatever it is. And the easiest way to deploy fast is to deploy tools. Like I showed you those visual management boards that have key performance indicators on it. So if you decide every department in this region of Russia in my company is going to have visual management boards and be expected to have 10-minute meetings every morning, that's easy to make happen. You have to buy the boards, you have to order people to have the meetings. So we call this going fast with a tool approach, but if you want to change behavior, you need this coaching process, and you need something, the leaders to be doing something every day, and you're checking how they're doing, and you're coaching them, and they're practicing and developing the skills over long periods of time. That's very labor intensive and time intensive, and you can't easily do that for thousands of people. So you might start with 10, and then the 10 will train 10. And eventually it will expand to the capacity of the organization, but at first it's may focus on one department and one set of leaders. We call the spreading lean fast going 1 inch deep and a mile wide. We call going deep 1 inch wide and a mile deep. And the big dilemma for implementation is, where are we going to put our energy? Are we going to go deep? And usually, for us, the best way to go deep is to pick a department, a part of the organization, and treat it as the first model. Train the leaders improve their process, they get better flow, they get less waste, the people in the organization have a better understanding of what's expected of them, their standard work, they're having daily meetings to check their performance, and they're actually using the data to improve the process. So we actually create a small subsystem that performs like a lean organization. Then from that, we develop some leaders who then go to other places, say your lean department, and start to train other people. And now you have some coaching capability, and you spread across the organization step by step based on whatever you think you're capable of next. This might take several years to get through a large organization. In fact, we usually say 5 years is a good number. Now, a lot of senior leaders don't have the patience for this. They want results, they want them fast. So in that case, the best you can do is to deploy the tools as quickly as possible. What are the kind of high value-added tools? And one of the tools is value stream mapping the process from the time you start to the time you've delivered to the customer. What happens in all those steps, where's their waste, and then coming up with a vision of where you want to be by some date. By this date, we want the process to look like this, take half the time, and we're going to work on these areas. So you got a future state vision with a plan, and that's very useful. And that you can do that across the organization. Another thing that is very useful is a daily management meeting, having these short meetings at the beginning of the shift every day, looking at key performance indicators. If you do that and you train the people, spend a little time training the people, and then you check on them regularly, say every week or so, and you're running around checking on people, and they're using these boards, they're seeing their goals, and they're seeing gaps between where they are and the goals, you will see improvement. That's meaningful improvement. So daily management, value stream mapping, two tools that are very valuable, and you can do it broadly. What we recommend is go deep someplace and create a model or two, and then for the organization you might go broader in using certain tools. And as you go deep and develop a model, you can then start to spread the deep process across the organization over time. But in the meantime, everybody's working on something and everybody's making some progress. So what is a lean leader, to summarize? A lean leader doesn't just order, a lean leader coaches and teaches. The lean leader actually knows the people, understands their strengths and weaknesses, as a good teacher does, and then is giving assignments to that person that will stretch that person. So everybody's at a different place. So what for this person is the next step of development that I'm trying to achieve. Teaches more by questioning and challenging than telling and giving answers. Builds trust. This only works if you, as a sport, trust me that I'm not going to use your problems against you. When I ask you to show me your problems, you show me your problems. If you feel like you're getting punished or criticized, you're not going to show me your problems anymore. And then lives the values. So the lean leader has to be a role model for the values of the company and be very consistent in their behavior every day. So that concludes my kind of quick summary of this whole book about developing lean leaders. I think there are a few questions.
Thank you, Jeffrey. We have two more questions because again we are out of time. But it was really interesting to hear from you, especially about the mentality, the difference of mentality between different nations. And again, the question. For sure you've heard about the scientific job organization. So, do you think there is any difference between it and lean production?
Okay, so first of all, I'm not exactly sure what's meant by the scientific job organization, but I know that there was a movement in the United States back in the 1920s and 1930s called scientific management, and there was a similar movement in Russia or the Soviet Union actually that was based on this scientific method of organizing work. In the United States, the key figure was a guy named Frederick Taylor, and he created the field that I'm in of industrial engineering. His idea for a scientific approach was that you had to have experts in work methods who figured out the best way to do the job, then taught that way to the managers and the workers, and then it was management's job to enforce the standard process. So the standard processes came from the staff organization, a group of people whose job was to think about scientifically how to lay out the factory, how to lay out each job, the standard work for each job. And the worker was expected not to think. So in fact, what Frederick Taylor said was that if the worker thinks and changes how they'll do the job, they're probably going to make it worse. Because only the scientific managers who are trained in this method, these industrial engineers, only industrial engineers know what's right and what's wrong. And in fact, the managers shouldn't even think. They should just enforce what the industrial engineers tell them to do. So it was based on a very top-down, directive approach, and all the expertise were in the specialists. In the case of Toyota, they want the group leaders and the managers to be industrial engineers, to do the thinking about there is some higher level work, say of introducing new equipment and laying it out and getting it running, done by engineering. But once the equipment is put in place, then the work groups own the process. And they will say the group leader is like the managing director of this business, the president of this business. And they're responsible for the equipment, they're responsible for people, they're responsible for the results. So the engineering organization is one source of support for the group leader. So they've turned the whole organization on its head. From the experts think and the people in the process do, to the people in the process are thinking and the experts are supporting them in their improvement. So that's the big difference. Now the way Lean has been deployed in the 1-inch deep, mile-wide approach, it's usually deployed more like Frederick Taylor scientific management top-down than like the Toyota way of bottom-up improvement. Because it takes time to develop a process of work groups who are improving every day. And if you don't have the patience for that, then you just order the experts, the Lean experts, go and do it, make it happen.
Thank you very much. Now just very general but very interesting question for us. How do you like it here in Russia?
Well, I've been here a number of times, but I come here just to speak and work, and I will see a few sites and then leave, so I can't say I've been here, I think, 5 times. I can't say I've spent a lot of time here, but each time I come, I enjoy the visit, and I talk to a lot of Russian people, and I ask about politics, and I ask about, we discuss U.S.-Russia relationships, and we also talk about Lean, and what the people I talk to, some of the Russians I talk to, what they say is that the differences between the United States and Russia are mainly in government and in politics, global politics. They really have nothing to do with what we do every day. And when we're talking to each other, we have shared interests in Lean and improvement, and I'm talking to very intelligent people who are very sincere about wanting to improve. When I visited your simple wine company, very strong mission, very strong culture of teamwork. Everybody was very excited about wine and about getting it out to people and serving the customer with very strong customer-centered values. When I went to the leather company, they were very, very passionate about the environment, about recycling, and about customer service and high quality and growing the business so it's a global business. Both those cases, I was very happy to spend time with those companies because they were very serious, thinking long term about building a great enterprise. And I very much appreciate that any place I go in the world. And I don't appreciate people who just want to make a quick dollar and get quick results and don't care about the people and don't care about the environment and don't care about the customer.
Thank you very much once again, and you are very much welcome here once again. And it was really a great honor for us for you to be here and for us to listen to your way of thinking, your type of thinking, I should say. And let us thank Jeffrey. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Друзья, давайте аплодисментами поблагодарим нашего спикера Джефри Лайкера. Ну что, можно погромче поаплодировать, друзья, это было информативно, круто, спасибо большое, Джефри. На этом не заканчивается наше мероприятие, музыкальная часть у нас прямо по курсу, поэтому, как договаривались ранее, все сектора, которые находятся на трибунах, приглашаются по желанию сюда, поближе к нам, подходите к сцене. На сцене группа The Timers Band.